everybody. We're back again as usual. Every Friday, we always come with a topic that will interest you. But we've been running the series State of the Nation. Yes, we started in the beginning with Professor Nwako Bea, subsequently onto Jumoke Akitelo. And yes, the last one was on migration. You saw the one before that, Fiscal on law enforcement. Our tradition is people that speak truth to power. We say it the way it is. My name remains Adebalogo. I am a host and anchor. This is episode 8 with Professor Chidi Aslem Odekalo. How we're going to be talking about economic crimes and nepotism in the Nigerian society. Prof, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thanks, Ade, for having me. Good day, sir.
Yeah, we all know Prof. It's not new to us.
And happy Easter in arrears and Eid Mubarak in advance.
Thank you very much, Prof. We all know Prof is a human rights activist, he's a lawyer, he's advisor to Ford Foundation, World Bank, International Council for Human Rights Policy in Geneva, and so on. Prof is a man of so many places, also a lecturer at the Fletcher School in Law. So he fits the billing and, he just goes straight to the point. Prof, the first question I want to ask you is this. There was something that happened some time ago when the Chief Judge of Nigeria was playing a congratulatory message to the president, and he was speaking as if he was pro-executive and all that. I'm sure you know the story I'm trying to say. Can you tell, for those that have not read it, how do you view that? Is that in the role, or is it right for the Chief Judge to have uttered those kind of statements?
I presume you're talking about what transpired when the High Command of the Judiciary went to visit the president in the Asara Villa for iftar about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yes, correct. Correct, for the iftar, yes, correct.
Things have kind of evolved in Nigeria, as I guess all of us are entitled to expect. Not always for the better. And this is one of those areas in which evolution doesn't necessarily, or change doesn't necessarily equate to progress. It's used, there was a time when JIC Taylor, John Idowu Conrad Taylor, was the first Chief Justice of Lagos. They were called Chief Justice then before they became State Chief Judges. Shortly after the Civil War. And Mobolaji Johnson, who was the military governor of Lagos, invited him to a state dinner. And JIC Taylor turned the dinner down because he said he was concerned about public perceptions, the fact that there were cases pending before his court between the Lagos state government, which Mobolaji Johnson headed, and other people. And he believed that going to a state dinner would create undue perceptions about even-handedness between the parties before his court. And so he politely turned down the dinner invitation by Mobolaji Johnson on behalf of the Lagos state government. And judges in Lagos State as well, Yaya Jinodu was fired as a judge of the Lagos State High Court in 1984 for just standing his grounds and asserting the independence of the judiciary against people who believed that judiciary should not be independent under the military. In Anambra State, Emmanuel Araka was fired as Chief Judge of the state in March 1985. Again, because he would not agree to meet with the state governor inside the state house to talk about the judiciary. He would have preferred a neutral ground and under more independent circumstances. And the governor decided he would not work with a chief judge who would not subject himself to the will of the military governor. Why am I telling these stories? Because now we are in a situation in which chief judges go to chief executives, as in governors and presidents, to prostitute themselves, prostitute the judiciary, and promise that the judiciary can do anything and everything to favor the government when cases come before them, which is pretty much what, for instance, the chief judge of the FCT did when he went to visit the current minister of the FCT late last year. I think it was last November. And in the same tradition, that's exactly what the current Chief Justice has done. When he claimed he was praying for the president, among other things, praising the president to the high heavens. He then said, talked about how Nigerians should expect more goodies. I thought for a moment that he had ceased to be a Chief Justice and become a Babalawo because he was looking into his crystal ball and seeing the future. But really, that's unfortunately where we have landed, with judges now becoming really part of the political vuvuzelas that you see everywhere.
That's very unfortunate. You know, why I ask is that I know you've done a lot of job on researching on the judiciary, nepotism, judges, and a lot of people are worried also because I know you wrote something about the chief judge appointing all his families into the judiciary, chief judge, lawyer here, and all that. So that's why people are worried. I've received a lot of complaints about that, but there's really nothing we can do. So, but let me ask you, from your point of view, with your experience and with the way the judiciary is badly tilted in the nepotistic order. I mean, I remember when we talk about Justice Dungba Mensah too, who has also been doing very badly in the appeal court. How do we navigate ourselves as a country? Is there a recipe for stopping all these things? Because it doesn't look like it's going to stop. It's bad enough that elections are not free and fair. But if the judiciary, the final arbiter of the poor man, is tilted towards government and wealthy people, wherein lies the hope, Prof?
Well, I listened to you say there is nothing we can do, and I think that is the first thing. I think we've got to come off the sense of despondency and helplessness in the face of all of this, and thinking, it's done, and there is no way to do anything about it. And then we'll say, okay, God will help us. God is not going to help us if we are willing to help ourselves, and if we continue to condone what is manifestly against the will of God. God is not going to subvert himself. And, for those who read the Bible, of course, you see that when the Israelites decided to subvert God, God didn't say, oh, please, don't do that to me. God allowed them to topple him and then live with the consequences. God is going to allow us in Nigeria to topple whatever we want to topple and then live with the consequences if we don't want to address what is clearly not acceptable. The first thing is that we've got to understand that the landscape has changed. When we had people like Mohammed Bello, Justice Aniagolu, Udo Doma, Ayo Irikefe, Oputa, Esho, and the rest of Bashir Wali and the rest of them, the sense was you couldn't possibly think about them doing these kinds of things that we are seeing now. The sense was that those men and later women who joined them, like Aloma Mukhtar, were by and large committed to doing right and to upholding the dignity of the judiciary. In return, we gave them utmost respect. They were almost worshipped. They were treated as next to God or to the Almighty, which is really why we call judges my Lord, okay?
My Lord, yeah.
They are doing God's work on earth. Now, when judges deviate from that, they lose the right to our respect. That's the first thing. It's difficult for me personally to go and start calling a person my Lord who I know is a rogue, who collects bribes. So the first thing I think we've got to do is to stop extending honorific respect and recognition to people who have chosen to sacrifice it. That's just very basic. But if enough people do it, it can add up to something significant. Secondly, this is not going to be turned around by leaving the judiciary in the hands of lawyers and judges, because lawyers and judges are self-interested in perpetuating their ascendancy. That means we've got to move the subject matter into the hands of the people and exact accountability for the malfeasance of the judiciary. And I do think that that requires a critical mass of civic and political actors. And you see, a lot of the politicians who are being shafted by the judges, because the politicians know. Why do they know? They are the people who the judges are going to collect money to sell judgments. And also the politicians actually have the receipts. And many of them are now on the wrong end of these things. Therefore, it's got to be possible to try and get together build a coalition of actors with whom it will be possible to question the political landscape that underpins judicial impunity. The third thing I believe we can do is then begin to address the need to alter the Constitution in such a way that some of the institutions can be redesigned. At the moment, the National Judicial Council, which is responsible for budgets and for discipline in the judiciary, is an alter ego of the Chief Justice and vice versa. The Chief Justice appoints 19 out of the 23 members, I believe, of the National Judicial Council. So he owns, or she owns the National Judicial Council. And we've got to be able to retool that so that the NJC at least can be independent of the, and not under the thumb of the Chief Justice. I do believe that there are things that we can do, but being able to envision all of those requires us to, first of all, rethink how we approach this situation and get out of the mold of despondency.
Can we ever, I mean, you said we have to rewrite the Constitution. You know, we've discussed this in the past. And I remember you said something about we even need to have a political agreement before we even write the Constitution. And do we want to live together and all that? Is it possible to even have a new Constitution the way things are structured? Or better put, should I put it this way, that do you have any record in history of where the judiciary has been overhauled in any country? I can't remember any, but I'm sure maybe you will.
Kenya is certainly one. Kenya completely retooled its judiciary in 2010. Oh. Completely.
Oh, wow.
Basically wiped away a generation of law judges and retooled its judiciary. Hired a new Chief Justice. It's a long story. I think we'll probably need a different session for that.
Okay.
But quite seriously, though, Kenya retooled its judiciary from all the clubby, corrupt past to an open system where they actually had open interviews and competition for the office of the Chief Justice. And the person whom they hired, Willie Mutunga, was a former political prisoner, a former law lecturer, the former regional representative of Ford Foundation in East Africa. And Willie became the first post-reform Chief Justice of Kenya. It was under that system that they also hired David Maraga, the Chief Justice who oversaw the nullification of the crooked election in 2017. So this is just very recent. And yes, it is possible to retool the judiciary. And by the way, South Africa also retooled its judiciary after liberation in 1994, because even the judges of apartheid era enjoyed independence and life tenure. They enjoyed tenure, which would have precluded that from happening. And so that retooling began with relocating the office of the Chief Justice from the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein to the Constitutional Court on the outskirts of Johannesburg. And then from there, the transition began to a new system. I think it is very possible for us to envision a different kind of judiciary in Nigeria, a judiciary in which people can go with the hope of achieving justice. At the moment, that's not the kind of court system we've got at all.
Do you think we still have good judges, in the judiciary?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Yes, indeed. We do have good judges. We do have judges who are committed to doing right, being fair as much as possible, and trying to apply the rules fairly, unquestionably so. Part of the problem is that most of those good judges now cannot hope to get recognition or advancement beyond the High Court. Because when this kind of organized crime gang that is currently at this particular time running the High Command of the Judiciary see those people, they are afraid. And so they want to have them stew in the lower reaches of the judiciary and die there or retire there. And when you insist on doing right as a judge, sometimes you can lose your orderly. You can lose electricity in your billetings. You can be sent on a punishment posting to places where there is no security, there is no electricity. Your car may have problems and is taken away. Come on now. Justice Dirty Joe, for instance, who retired from the Supreme Court recently, had his official quarters completely wiped out in a burglary at in Abuja within a month of his retirement, and everything. I mean, that I think was reported publicly as well. But now, can you imagine a burglary in the official quarters of the Supreme Court justices in Abuja? That is most unlikely, but it happened. That's where we are, and it happened late last year. It happened in December, actually.
I was reading something you wrote. I've not finished reading it. So when public agencies go rogue, and I've not finished reading it, but I know a lot of it will have emanated from what the EFCC is doing, because I know you also said that in the past, EFCC was the solution, but now they are the problem. Why do you say that?
Well, as I said, when the EFCC's level is chasing after cross-dressers, you're in trouble. Which is exactly what they've reduced themselves to. Chasing after cross-dressers and trying to charge them for being cross-dressers is not part of the mandate of the EFCC. It's not why the country created the EFCC. People forget that at the time Nigeria created the EFCC, Nigeria was at risk of being thrown out of the international payment system because we had a high level exposure to organized financial crime. Okay? And we needed to show that we had the will and the means to do something about it. At that time, by the way, the ICPC, the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, was already in existence. But the country believed, the leadership then under Obasanjo believed it was not enough, and worked with a few people to empower and create an EFCC that would be robust enough to show that Nigeria was doing something about organized financial crime and also then economic crime affecting the country's prospects domestically. That was why we created the EFCC. And Section 46 of the EFCC defines what an economic and financial crime is. There is no way going after Bobrisky is within the ambit of what the EFCC is authorized or was created to do under the EFCC Establishment Act. That is unlawful. And we should not allow people exercising statutory powers to create a habit out of acting unlawfully. That's just the situation. Going after, and you see, Bobrisky is unusual. Right? And if everyone in our society we go after everyone in our society because they're unusual, it's going to be a terrible. You and I are unusual, okay? Every one of us is unique in a sense. So tomorrow they will go after Derele because Derele is unusual. The next day they will go after Charlie Boy because Charlie Boy is unusual. He wears lipstick and he has rings on all fingers, and he is 73 or 74. That's very unusual. So we've got to be very careful about the things we want to, the precedents we want to set as a society. We don't want to create a society in which people are destroyed because they're unusual.
Okay, but the EFCC question is supposed to be independent. I mean, because in Kano State now, the state government is trying to prosecute Ganduje for some economic crime, which are already in public domain, those crimes. We also the video of when he was collecting bribe.
Did you hear what Ganduje said?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. That's where my question really that it's only the EFCC and the Attorney General that can prosecute it. Exactly. So my question is, why the EFCC not living up to the billions and prosecuting those kind of people? Are they scared?
That is why I say they are now part of the problem, not part of the solution. Because in the past, at least, no matter how ineffectual an EFCC procedure was or in EFCC's attention, people were actually afraid.
Mm.
You would not have someone with Ganduje's exposure saying it's only the EFCC that can prosecute me.
His party chairman today.
Thank you. Even at that, even a party chair in the past would have been afraid of a ruling party, would have been afraid of earning the attentions of the EFCC. Today, Ganduje is saying it's only the EFCC that can look at me because he knows this EFCC is absolutely captured and ineffectual. That is the only reason he can be saying that kind of thing. And that is a measure of how useless the institution has become, which is why we've got to encourage them to turn a new leaf if it is within them to do so. But look at it. Kaduna State Governor says he cannot pay pensions, he can't pay salaries because his predecessor has wiped the state. You look at the debt profile of the state and you see the correlations between the numbers of the debts when the monies are accrued and the kinds of things that the money could have been spent on. And you know what you can figure, you can smell what transpired. But what is happening? The EFCC doesn't see that. It averts its gaze. Go to Cross River State. The current governor says his predecessor totally bankrupted the state. What is the EFCC doing? It is doing absolutely nothing. You go from state to state. It is the same thing happening over and over and over. The EFCC is unwilling, unable, and neglects to do anything to bring to account the people who have plundered the country. Instead, they are preoccupied with cross-dressers.
Interesting. Will we ever get justice with people that have stolen money? That's why I really want to, one of the focal points for today. Will we ever get justice? Look at El Rufai, for example. I mean, even the governors that people are celebrating in Nigeria in the past, you know, I remember in the Southwest, I was doing some study on road construction. Some of those poor states were tarring a kilometer of road for $1 billion naira. Some of these monies are borrowed. These guys now, they've left office, they're still working. So will we ever get justice? Because it does look like most of the problem we have are monies that have been mismanaged and people just get away with it. And the same people will keep recycling the same people over and over again. Can we ever get justice? Or is it just failure of leadership that will never get justice? Well, people are losing hope.
Look, it's down to us, really. If we want justice, we will get it. If we don't want justice, we will not get it. You know, there is a, you know, Ede Waterworks was done with, I'm sure you know where Ede is in Osun State now. It used to be, of course, it used to be in the old Oyo State. And the Ede Waterworks was done with debt, or was supposed to have been done with debt, right? It ended up in the pocket of a very powerful traditional ruler who is now late. Of course, I don't want to mention names, but you know, you don't have to work too hard to guess who it was. And that money had to be posted onto the balance sheet of the old Oyo State under Bola Ige. And you know, Oyo State people had to pay for that money so that a particular traditional ruler could go around in Rolls Royce. You know, it's the kind of thing that happens around the country where people socialize the costs of their personal profligacies and charge those onto the public liability as debt. And then your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and mine have got to figure out how to pay for it. But maybe, you know, your children will not live in Nigeria, mine may not live in Nigeria, and a few others, including that of some senior politicians who live in Nigeria, so we don't bother ourselves about those. But if we had to, our children had to live in Nigeria, or we're condemned to doing that, we will have to bother about what transpires. And so my hope is that enough of us who have grandchildren who are going to live in Nigeria, who are going to be leaving assets for our grandchildren in Nigeria, or who even hope to be buried in Nigeria, we'll look at this situation and say this is unacceptable, and so we've got to fight it, and no matter what it takes.
Let's look at nepotism. I mean, the judiciary, for example, is something you have done a lot of study on, and it's so rampant there. Now, we have a president today that is Yoruba, clearly is empowering more Yorubas appointment-wise. We are the one before him was Hausa Fulani. He also over-empowered people from his kith and kin. Now, if the next one comes from Akwa Ibom or from the south, it does look like we're going to be going around in that circles of every, so it's now a norm, you know. So can we ever break this barrier of ethnocentrism, nepotism, and, you know, my brother, my sister, or federal character that is even enshrined in the Constitution? Do we really need to have federal character? Must there, because it's not been adhered to anyway. How do we break it? Because everybody is forlorn now, Prof. It doesn't look like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like you said, the people in question, poverty has been weaponized. People are thinking of what to eat, not how to fight for their rights anymore.
At some point, first of all, at some point, people are going to reach a breaking point. It's a question of when that breaking point comes. But if Tinubu is going to Lagos and people are standing in Isaleko by the roadside, not waving at him but telling him a being power, he needs to be careful, right? It's not, a lot of people will say, oh, we're going to teach Peter Obi and his supporters a lesson. Peter Obi and his supporters are actually very well fed compared to the people saying a being power. And Peter Obi and his supporters are not likely to be the people, saying a being power. All right? Now, and the places where you have the most hunger, at least manifestations of hunger, also the places from which at least INEC wrote up the largest numbers for the Tinubu presidency. Okay, and so that's the first thing, which is part of the reason why the other parts of the country are watching, are not interested, because they're saying, well, you're getting a dose of your medicine, fix this for yourself. Now, I'm not quite sure really that Tinubu is appointing even Yorubas into positions. He's appointing his coterie from Lagos.
Lagos is clique from Lagos boys.
This is a particular clique from Lagos. This is not a pan-Yoruba thing, okay? And yes, all the names, of course, sound very Yoruba and are Yoruba. But the fact of the matter is that this is a Lagos power clique. And so even Yoruba people are complaining.
That's true. Even
Yoruba people are complaining that this is not about us, so this is about a particular clique. And so it's a somewhat perverse brand of nepotism. The nepotism, of course, is self-evident, and I don't think we need to go too far with it. But the exclusions, I was look at this. Some of this is also honestly self-defeating. Okay, a power structure. Part of the reason for federal character is actually enlightened self-interest of the leadership. You need to involve other people so that if they're also plotting against you, you have people who are well disposed enough towards you to let you know, to protect you, to look out for your interests. So this morning, I was looking at a report. The Inspector General of Police is Yoruba. The First Public Relations Officer is Yoruba. The IG has just appointed a Deputy First Public Relations Officer who is Yoruba. That is just madness. It is silly. It does not reflect the enlightened the interests of an enlightened leadership. Because when in terms of optics, it makes you look very pedestrian and very insular and very cabalized. But also in terms of your own self-interest, you cannot protect yourself. So this is really my response to this. I know I'm not sure it's the answer you expected to hear. But
no, I mean,
quite honestly, it is beneath and beyond self-defeating. It is idiotic. So I'm not even going to get into the niceties of the legal parameters of federal character and all of that. An administration that likes itself will make the effort to create some balance in the appearance, or at least an appearance of balance in its appointments, because it is in self-interest. If people cannot see that, I'm not sure what they're doing in the vocation of leadership.
Yeah, Buhari didn't pretend about it. Tinubu is not pretending about it, and the country is what's suffering. So, Prof,
But
let's talk about Fiscal.
now look at Buhari, for instance. Buhari wasn't the insecurity in the country because he was blinkered on the question of appointments. And so he could not understand most parts of Nigeria. He wasn't getting the right intelligence, he wasn't getting the right briefings, he wasn't getting the right representation. And therefore he could not take the right decisions. And so insecurity got worse under him. And it is easily, I'm not talking correlation here, I'm talking causation. Because he could not get the right team that was sufficiently representative of the country to advise him, he could not take the right decision. So even on the security situation where people had assumed he was going to be strong, he was useless and he made things worse. That my hope is that Tinubu can learn from that, but I don't know whether he's willing to.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I want to talk about Fiscal, a fantastic guy. He was my guest about 2 weeks ago. He was embedded amongst the smugglers, custom in Benin Republic. Very, very bold. It's something that is very unusual in our climate now, at least in the journalistic palace, because we know our Ivy League newspapers don't carry the news they should carry again. Anyway, now the police have summoned him and they are not addressing the issues that should be addressed, the cyber crime wing of the police and all that. They've summoned him. But the issues at hand pertaining to custom with the smugglers and all that. This type of action makes whistleblowers keep quiet, discourages others and all that. Now, we've discussed failed state, collapsed state, and all this in the past. This gentleman risked his life to reveal all he did. People have died. Now, they want him. Well, no, they just want to shut him up and all that. You're a lawyer. What do you advise future whistleblower and Fiscal in this regard? How do they go about such situations, scenarios?
I think we've got to continue to do what we do. Let those people continue doing what they're doing, as in the customs and police. I mean, I know Fiscal, of course, is my brother, and he is cut from a very rare cloth. And it's not easy to do the kind of work he's doing.
Nice one.
Now, the police have claim to have invited him, but there is no evidence that they have, by the way.
Okay, fantastic.
What has happened is they invited the chairperson of the board of the FIJ, right? She attended the meeting and came out with a report that the police told her to produce Fiscal. Now, she is not Fiscal's mother. Fiscal is not her son. Fiscal is not her husband. They are not joined at the hips. Fiscal is also not a child. So if the police want Fiscal and they believe that the chair of his board is the person to be able to reach him, they should write a letter requesting Fiscal to attend a meeting with them in exactly the same way that they wrote a letter to the chair of his board to come and meet with them. That's the first thing. If, secondly, they are saying they want to investigate him for a crime, their letter should clearly indicate that they are investigating allegations of a crime in which he may be a suspect, and so that he can show up prepared to answer to the allegations. At the moment, there is no letter. There is no official notification. All we've got is the word of someone saying this is what they've said. I'm not at all suggesting here that she is not reporting accurately. What I am saying is it is also possible that the police, if Fiscal were to show up, Fiscal could be disappeared, and then they say we never asked him to come up or to come around. So
it's happened before.
Thank you. So so we've got to just be careful about making sure that all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted in this thing. If they are asking for Fiscal, where is the proof that they are asking for Fiscal? It does not at the moment exist, other than the say-so of the chair of the board whom they interrogated. I don't think that is enough basis for that conversation.
Fantastic. Well, that's very, very, very encouraging because I've been very worried because the revelation were overwhelming. I see no reason why all the names mentioned should still keep their jobs, especially in the customs. Anyway, Prof,
that's the point.
Nigeria is still not moving very well. It's still battered beyond repairs. Nothing seems to be working. Recently, people are celebrating, hearing that the dollar against the naira is stronger and all that. But at the same time, we're seeing depletion in the Nigerian foreign reserve. I know under law, it's criminal also to spend government money without appropriation, and it's not the first time it's happening. How can people like you, people like us, and other well-meaning Nigerians stop government from spending money without appropriation? Just recently, we saw what happened in the budget padding. People that are supposed to be a check and balance for the executive spending money and the Aquabios of this world and all that. Now, I know you have said when the people are tired, they will rise. But before the people rise, are there ways that we can stop all this from happening? If we go to court, the judges too are compromised anyway to a very large extent. How do we stop this? Because there's no money. The country is, I don't know. It's still looking.
There clearly is money, but it's captured like much in the public space in the country. There clearly is money. If you if you're installing one solar unit for 180 million naira, for instance, or you're buying one.
I mean, it's outrageous.
You're buying one four-wheel drive for $160,000 which is about actually triple or quadruple the market, the actual market price. It cannot be that bad. Or if we are doling out 500 million minimum for particular senators to do whatever they like and probably fly their mistresses to holidays in Malibu, or giving shelling out 90 billion to subsidize Hajj. We cannot say that we don't have money. What we've got is misplaced priorities. Okay, people see government as the place where you go to do saraka, not the place where you go to protect the interests of the largest segments of your people. And mind you, we are talking about a country that currently has the highest rate, second highest rate of infant and maternal mortality in the world. I mean, even Sierra Leone is now doing better than we are, and that's how bad things are. So I think we ultimately comes down to what our priorities are. But my sense is we've also not just got to focus on the federal government, we also got to take state government seriously. And at the moment, but increasingly it's looking like at least on issues of public goods, education, public health, some aspects of infrastructure, we may actually begin to get more progress and guarantee better progress at the state level than we can expect from the federal level. Increasingly, we've got to make sure that the states are also trying to do their best for their people.
Yes. Let's go to Senegal. I'm sure you all saw the news, the young man that won the election recently. Now, Sonko was the front runner. He got locked up, then he couldn't run, then he brought in Bashiru, the other guy, and he won the election. Now, in my opinion, I mean, I know that we all know what Macky Sall did. He wanted to thwart their effort. Of course, he didn't want to leave. There were so many things. But my mind goes back to something we discussed together in the past. We talk about a free and fair election, the people rising up to the billing, not abdicating responsibility. And the story that comes to mind was the one you told me about Ondo State and Anambra State back then. Remember that in the case of Omoburiwo and Ajashi, that people of Ondo stood their ground, and they were very emphatic on what they would do and what they actually even did when it looked like they were going to swing the pendulum against their wish. And Anambra, on the other hand, Sissiono versus Mobudu, the people in Anambra, rather, they showed no energy, and the rest is history. Do you think what happened in Senegal, vis-a-vis Macky Sall allowing the real result of election to take its natural course, do you think it was a result of the fear of what the people would do if the elections were not fair?
Absolutely, yes. Mackey, with his maneuvers, one, he had bled power. Two, he had bled every constituency possible. And so he wasn't even in a position to do anything. He had lost the people, he had lost the institutions, and he had lost even his innermost coterie. All right? So he could not order the soldiers out to do anything. He couldn't get the Constitutional Court, which was originally in his favor, went against him when he decided to summarily cancel the elections originally. Yeah? So he had lost the Constitutional Council, he had lost the people, and without the institutions, he had lost the security services, because the security services were not going to go and shoot people and then lose power. And when power pivoted, they then get prosecuted for crimes as security services. So he'd lost all the essential instruments and institutions and constituencies of state power. There was no way he was not going to yield up at the results. But the other thing that happened was, because of all these shenanigans, the people decided not to take any chances by allowing the elections to go to a second round. This was the first time a presidential contest in Senegal was being won at the first round. Usually, what happens is the elections will take place, and then the two highest vote getters will go into a second round, a runoff. The people of Senegal didn't want that nonsense to be happening this time. They wanted it over and out quickly. And so that is how the elections were won in the first round, and all the parties coalesced. And my hope is that that's a lesson also for Nigerian politicians, the opposition. If Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar and Kwankwaso had been in the same camp, we would not be talking about Tinubu and APC, staying in power at this time, because that front would have been enough to guarantee that the APC would have been toughed out with adequate margins, against any eventuality and any possibility. But they were all too invested in their respective egos that they could not come together to provide the country with a coherent front against what is clearly, in my view, incapable, certainly at the time Buhari handed over, incapable leadership. And so they've granted the APC another 4 years, arguably another 8 years, depending on how things go. And that's the window they have to try and come together and build a coherent opposition with a common front. They're also burning it up. Atiku is here, Peter is there, the other one is there, and never the twain or more shall meet. And if we cannot learn lessons from what's happened in Senegal, we are going to continue to suffer what we are going through as a country.
What I actually find very, very impressive about Senegal was that when Abdou Diouf was president, when Abdou Wade was going to take over from him, it was these same people that supported Wade and they threw Abdou Diouf out. And when Wade was trying to be a dictator, the people rose in favor of Macky Sall and voted out Wade. Same they've done with Bashiru, Sonko, and their team. So hopefully those ones will manage it. Now, still on the Nigerian lesson from Senegal. Now, we're hearing stories about mergers here and there. From your experience, legal mind, activist and all that, of course, you're highly opinionated. What do you think? We all agreed they should march together and all that. Do you think an Atiku, I'm actually a direct question, do you think Atiku should still run for president?
Look, I'm not a politician. These are things, I think,
citizen.
Politics is a rational game at the end of the day. You cannot but admire Atiku's durability and his commitment to the electoral game. He's been there for over 3 decades and he's still standing, right? Is it possible to agree with everything he's done? Obviously not.
No.
I personally don't like the idea, to be perfectly honest with you, that after every election he leaves the country to go to Dubai or to Morocco or something like that, right? Because a democracy needs an opposition. You can't just do an election and then you leave the country. You've got to stand up for the things you believe in and provide leadership. Because it is only by standing up and providing leadership in the aftermath of an election that you can rally the people and still give the people who support you at least hope that it is possible to work towards your goal and your agenda. Atiku is articulate for, he's fitter than most people who are, a lot of Nigerians who are 20, 25 years younger than him. My hope also is that, you see, I think it was, what's his name, the majority leader in the Senate, McConnell, right, in the United States, who said, probably I'm summarizing him, not using his exact words, but one of the greatest talents in politics is knowing when to quit the stage, right? He said something along those lines when he announced that he will not be returning after the November elections this year. And I do think that every senior politician has got to determine for themselves when to exercise that talent to quit the stage. Do I think Atiku still has the leadership project in him in Nigeria? I do think so, but leadership is different from office, right?
That's true.
Leadership is different from office, and sometimes actually you gain leadership by not being in office. And a classic example, of course, is Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere left the presidency in Tanzania in order to build the Chama Cha Mapinduzi into the force that it has become. And so many decades after he quit power, CCM is still in power because of the fact that Nyerere was willing to know when to quit office in order to remain in power. That, I think, or remain in authority, that I hope is something that Nigerian politicians can also learn from.
So, a citizen abdicating responsibility, do you think the opposition today has also failed? Because
completely. There is no, that's why APC is running amok and doing what it is, because I frankly don't, the parties, there are at least three leading parties: PDP, NNPP, and Labour Party, right?
Labour Party.
And of course, there are others like the SDP and APGA and all of that. But they're not offering much, and everybody is gravitating towards the coattails of Tinubu. You see, Wike is neither APC nor PDP, and he's both all at the same time. And, everybody wants to please the president and is grateful to the president for being in power. And it becomes difficult, really, to see what alternative ideas they are offering or what alternative visions or pathways to progress that they are offering. And without that, so what are you seeing? The real opposition actually is in citizens, in social media, on the streets, poor women in Nasarawa State protesting and being clobbered by security services. But the people who are there to articulate a case for why they offer alternative leadership pathways are simply missing in action. That's disgraceful.
Highly. Now, do you think the obedience, as they're called, do you think they are acting, not with Labour Party, but do you think they are acting as a formidable opposition right now? I mean, in a sense of it, at least maybe on the social media. Do you think so?
I don't know. I can't call myself an expert on the obedience, quite honestly. Now, I know that there is a difference between the Labour Party and the obedient movement.
And the obedient, yeah, clearly. That's why I asked.
But the obedients are not making a bid for power as such, as an obedient movement, right? And, they're not, are the obedience necessarily tied to the coattails of P2P as such, yeah? This is my reading. So it's a movement that I could well be wrong. Is still trying to negotiate its own identity and its own mission in the aftermath of what transpired last year. I'm not even sure that there has been a proper review of what transpired, so that they can distill the right lessons from it and then try and retool or try and enhance and improve and update, which is always necessary because the political landscape is always changing and is always evolving. And so I don't know where they stand on those things. And I'll be reluctant to hazard a guess as to what their trajectory could be.
So do you think they should form themselves into a formidable political force and make a bid for power?
It's
Like in Senegal, they used to.
It's up to them. I don't see why not, if that's what they wish to do. Whether there's sufficient coherence, adequate coherence in the obedient movement to do that is a different matter. Because a significant driving force in the obedient movement is also diaspora, right? But the diaspora dimension, and the diaspora don't have a vote in Nigeria at the moment. And so the diaspora can, of course, provide resourcing, and there's no, as long as you're Nigerian, of course, you can join a political party and you can finance a political party. That's not a problem. But if you're not there when push comes to shove, in order to cast your vote to help organize, get bodies on the ground, then all of that can also be hot air, because the politicians on the ground will always find ways to outgame you in election operations. So all of that tells me there is some hard-headed thinking needed. And my hope is that at some point the obedience will engage with that.
It's interesting. One more question on Peter Obi and the obedient. There are stories all about that. Nasir El-Rufai, the short man from Kaduna, is likely running mate to whatever party or whatever aspiration in future. Do you think that would be a wise decision? Nobody has confirmed it, but I'm just asking.
I don't discuss the file, little man. Generally, I generally don't discuss it.
Prof, thank you very much. I know you're pressed for time and you're very busy. Thank you for coming to Atlanta to discuss. Thank you for heeding our call all the time. Thank you to our listeners in the 7th continent. Professor Chidi Odinkanu is here. I'm sure you'll be here again, not in too distant future. Thank you for shedding light. Thank you for all you do, especially on the Nigerian judiciary. Thank you for being true to power always. Thank you. And it's going to be a wrap there. Thank you, everybody. See you next week, Friday. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Ade, for having me.
You're most welcome, Prof. You're most welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yes.